Okay, I'm going to call to order this special meeting of council. First, I'd like to respectfully acknowledge that this meeting is taking place on the traditional unceded territory of the Snanawas First Nation. First item on the agenda is adoption of agenda. I'll just make the motion that the November 19th, 2025 special council meeting agenda be adopted with an additional section 12 for a motion to close the meeting pursuant to section, or close the meeting to the public pursuant to section 91C and 90 subsection 1E of the community charter. Seconded by Councillor Lerner. Discussion or additional amendments? Okay, hearing nothing, I'll move to call in a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. So we have under Mayor and Council verbal updates. I'll start with Councillor Lerner if you wish. Okay, nothing for myself. Councillor Jones? Nothing. Councillor Mundell? Nope. Okay. All right, so that moves us on to public input period. So do we have any remotely registered this evening? Nothing. Okay. And sorry, did you manage to add Councillor Savage or?
No, I'm still working on it, but he said to just continue without him.
Okay. All right, so public input period. So persons recognized by the chair to speak must first state their name and address for the record, may speak once for up to 2 minutes unless council resolves otherwise, and are limited to providing comment regarding items listed on this evening's agenda. Comments must be directed to the chair and not to be directed to individual council members, staff, or the audience, and must not include personnel issues. So we already have one person at the microphone. Name and address for the record, please, and you'll have 2 minutes.
Dave Scott, 6898 Harwood Drive. Just like to speak to a couple items regarding the budget tonight. The first item is infrastructure, and particularly our road and water infrastructure. We're falling behind. Many of the roads in the district are over 50 years old since they've been paved. That's well past their lifespan. And our water system, for example, up where I live in the Winchelsea area, we've had 3 breaks in the last year on main water lines. So it's all asbestos cement pipe. It's old. It's due to be replaced. So I think, and I think there is in the future financial plan some work to be done up in that area. But as an example, the roads on Harwood, where I live, it was on our to-do plan 5 years ago. It's not even there anymore. We don't need speed bumps up where I live because the road has so many natural bumps and it just slows traffic down. So I think we need to get serious about replacing our infrastructure, particularly roads and water. The second item is, I see in the financial plan that we're not going to have a director of public works, and I have concerns about that. We have tens of millions of dollars of civil infrastructure, water, sewer, roads, buildings. We need to take care of that stuff, and I think we need somebody that's responsible in that position to look after those particular items. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Additional speakers. We only have 2 members in the gallery, and still nobody remotely registered. Okay, good. All right, so that moves us on then to under number 7A. So we have under legislative matters, we have the 2026 to 2030 draft operating financial plan summary. So Director Sapola, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Council. Today, this report was one that Council had requested after the presentation of the detailed report for the operating. This has the changes of salaries, wages, benefits, contracted services, materials and supplies. I've grouped them by major category and trying to answer the question from Council as to what was in each of the categories. And I know that the questions came in about the amounts, and because salaries and wages was large, I just wanted to say that that's made up of all of the expenses that are involved with staff, which includes training, travel, conference expenses, salaries, wages, benefits, of course, and I've gone through and given that a further breakdown of travel expenses, saw an increase of 21,900. Benefit changes were approximated 100,000. Salary wage increase around 214,000. The proposed positions that are new, there were 3 of them. The civil engineering technologist, project manager, a maintenance technician 2, and administrative assistant,
Point
which
of
will be an exempt
clarification,
position.
please?
Yeah,
Or
hold
point-
on, just 2 seconds, just wait to be recognized, and then, yeah, can you state your point of clarification?
Can you just let us know what page in the agenda that you're on so we can follow along?
Sorry, I'm on page 5 of the agenda.
Page 5, thank you. Sorry for interrupting.
No worries, thank you. So the civil engineering tech project manager will be offset by eliminating the director of public works. Contracted service major increases include election expenses, 45,000. That'll be offset by a draw from reserve. From the stabilization reserve, that was in last year's plan as well. Legal was increased by 16,000. Road repairs were increased at 33,750. Those were the major categories in that particular section. Reserve contributions are reduced in the water and sewer funds due to inflationary changes and 2 new positions that are partially funded with user fees in those areas. I do go on there's another report coming in at the end of the agenda, and the 4th report that I've produced that request that council consider user fee increases to address those reductions to reserves.
Okay, thank you for that. Through to council, so we've got Councillor Savage up on the screen. So through to council, questions? Did you have a question, Councillor Savage? Yeah, and you're muted.
No questions, thank you.
And you have your raise hand feature thing too, you can use under, I believe, what is it, under reactions or something like that? Yeah. It's kind of an unusual place for it, but. Okay, through the rest of the council, any questions? And through to Director Spola, if you can just kind of clarify the water and sewer funds, as who actually pays for that?
Water and sewer funds are paid through the collection of user fees that are billed to the district users through their utility bills.
And do we know how many people in Lantzville are actually, or how many properties are actually serviced? Because there's a lot of misinformation around that. People think that, because they pay taxes, they automatically are paying into water infrastructure, but they're not connected to water, for instance.
Yeah, that's not correct. It comes through the water billings. So I will get that information for you.
So in short, if you're not on water, you're not paying any taxes related to water. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jones, go ahead.
Thank you. A couple of questions, please. I'm looking on page 2 of 6 of the 11.5 by 17 line-by-line breakdown. And I have a couple of questions on this page. Down near the bottom, there is an item, and let's see, NT1. And
She's referring to the blue
NT1,
capital
oh,
page.
sorry, I
Just
should
hold on,
say
just
it's
2
the
seconds. Just
storm.
Councillor Jones, just please wait. Director Sepola? Yeah, I think we're on the wrong section. You're on capital projects.
Okay, you want me to wait on this? Sorry, you just talked about water. I thought we'd opened it up. Fine, I can wait.
Yeah, just operational capital, it's all, yeah. All right, so unless there's any questions, we'll move on. Go ahead, Counselor Lerner.
Yes, sorry, I had a couple of quick questions regarding the operational plan. My first, I'm just pulling up the digital version here, but my question was with regard to the, if I recall correctly, at our last special budget meeting of October 29th, there was discussion of bringing forward business cases regarding the two potential hires that the CAO had mentioned. And so I'm wondering, those business cases, one, when we think those might come forward, and two, I was just out of the room for a second, but I think Mayor Swain may have alluded to this when it comes to the potential of hiring a Water 2 technician as an operational expense. The business case would show that the funding is coming from water user fees only. Is that correct?
Water user and sewer.
And sewer?
Yeah,
Okay,
that's correct.
okay. And sorry, just, if I may ask, when do you think we'll get those business cases for those two items?
I'm working with the other directors to get those together. We've been working, I do have the one for the administrative assistant, but I'd like to get them all published together so that we can have a fulsome discussion on those ones.
Sure, perfect, I appreciate that. And then I think this is likely an operational item and not capital, but if it is capital, please let me know. There was previously in the budget an item council had raised through the fire department, $10,000 per year for providing reflective signs to the community. And I know that I noted that is not in the budget for this coming year. And so whether it's operational or capital, I'm not sure. But I wanted to know, is it in the budget for 2026? And if not, how many people were on the waiting list at the end of 2025 to still receive, that still wanted those items? Thank you.
Thank you. That, actually, I was talking with the the fire chief on that, and that was is that the fire safe rebate, or do you know which specific line there was? Because I didn't cut anything from the fire department. Or,
So that would be the reflective signs program.
I'll check with the fire chief on that. I don't have any recollection that any of his programs were reduced. I do have a $10,000 fire safe rebate that went unused this year so far. And also I have a couple other items that were $10,000 in the fire department, but I'd like to make sure that I get the correct line before I speak about that.
Yeah, go ahead, Councilor Lerner.
Sure, no, I appreciate that. So if it's possible to get back on that, the reason I ask is that in the budget or in the operational plan, there was a talk of savings, and on page, I believe 5, it listed some of our agenda package. It listed some of the savings and some of the increases. And then I actually think part of that was discussed in operational previously, but then on page, I'd have to check, but there was a page in here where it mentioned certain items being removed, and it mentioned a $10,000 item. So I thought it was listed as reflective signs previously. And so if it's possible also to know how many people were on the waiting list, if it was, 10 people, maybe we don't need a lot of money, but if there was 1,000 people waiting to get it, it might be a different story. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Councilor, well, I'll take a speaker's list. So Councilor Mundell, do you want to speak? And Councilor
you.
Jones, just 2 secs. Councilor Jones?
I have a lot
No?
of,
Okay, go ahead, Councilor Mundell.
oh, sorry. I have a few to go through, so if anybody wants to jump in and take a turn after I start going through a few. So I'm going to start on page 1 of the large operational budget. Some of these I just have really questions because the line items don't exactly explain what they are.
Okay.
So under government grants, there's a provincial one, 01410-412. It says provincial grants restricted. Can somebody explain to me what that is?
So through your worship, a restricted grant is a grant that comes with caveats, like you can only spend it on this, you can't spend it on that. Like you can spend it on a fire hall, but you can't spend it on a public workshop. So those grants are restricted by use, by whatever the province sets out in the user guides.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, there's a big jump from 2024 actual to 2025 actual in that one. So, big change there. On the next page, I just want to clarify too with, I believe it's in the bylaw revenue line. 01457,435. I see that we had some very small revenue in 2024, but nothing in 2025? Is that?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay,
It
so-
shows 550 and then nothing. I'd have to check to see what bylaw revenue is. That would be whatever fines may have been generated by the bylaw enforcement.
Okay, so as of right now, we're not collecting fines
We haven't charged any fines.
in the way of bylaw revenue. Thank you. Okay, and then on the following page, on line 01510,692, under administration wages and benefits,
Correct.
there's a significant difference between 2024 actual to 2025 actual. And then we have quite a large budget for 2026.
So again, through your worship, the difference in these wages are so the finance officer wasn't hired until April. The CAO was not hired until just lately, September. So those are two significant positions. And there's also been a couple of vacancies for hiring in the finance department as well, which would come under this code.
Okay,
There is an offset for that. If I can find it, there is a contracted professional fees. So if we follow that down about 4 inches, you'll notice under legal and professional that the contract for finance was 83,000 and the contract for administration was 72,000. The 83,000 was for the contractor that did the finance work, and the 72,500 was for the contractor that did the CAO work. You'll notice that neither of those have budgets, so that's the offset to your wages.
okay, thank you. Actually, that
welcome.
helps a lot because I figured that with our contracted professionals, that they had to be accounted for somewhere, so that does help explain that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just number, and this is just a question for my knowledge, 01510,523 under professional fees, there, staff meeting. I'm just wondering, what is this for? What's the budgeted item for? Oh, sorry, it does say Christmas various employee recognition events. Sorry, I needed to read the notes. Perfect.
No
Okay.
worries.
Just trying to understand all these items. And then on the next page at the very top, software licenses. There's a very large jump from 2024 actual to 2025 actual. And just wondering the change, and then for our next budget, it goes down. So I just want to make sure that we're budgeting correctly if we had such a large amount this year.
So our contractor that we have for IT is billing us on a monthly basis for our Microsoft 365 licenses. And the previous person that did the budget interpreted all of that cost as contract. And I've separated the two and done the correction in the 2025 year actuals. So that council could see the offset. In going over those amounts, I'm still working with my deputy to determine additional licensing, because we're trying to group the licensing. We found that there's been several software licensing spots in the budget. And my understanding was that it was supposed to be all amalgamated from last year and picked up, like planning has a bit of software licensing in it, as does the fire department. So we're trying to make sure that we capture all of that. When you add the two numbers together for software licensing, and then on the previous page, right at the very bottom, the computer maintenance contract, I'm trying to stay within 2% of that budget, of those two budget lines added together to make sure that I'm not increasing it or decreasing it by too much. So I've been working with both of those numbers to try and figure it out. I'm also trying to pin the contractor down on what his increase will be for next year. So, and getting that contract pricing from him. Another is I'm also trying to come up with, you can save money by paying for the license up front, annual. So, and I'd like to do that because you can usually save a bit of money by going ahead and doing that. So, so again, working with the contractor to try and find some savings, try and hold them to as low an increase as I can get. But both of those numbers together, I'm working with making sure that they stay in a range of under 5% increase overall.
Okay, so next year, likely those will be split and it won't be that same amount for
Yeah,
actual.
I'm working with them.
Okay. Okay. And I think for that one, okay, if we go down to the bottom then, under bylaw enforcement, the contract line, other contract, the very last one, I see that we have down for our budget, or our actual was 42,000. And the budget this year is for 71. Is that because this person, did they start partway through the year? Is that why that number is low and then up to 70,000 for
They were
this
behind
year's
on-
budget?
So when I published this document, it was at the end of October. We hadn't gotten the September billing yet, so we've been catching them up.
Okay.
So I will have an updated sheet as we go along. Likely at the next meeting, I will give you a totally updated document because there's a number of expenses that are coming through now. Like, for example, we only pay the firefighters once a year, and we're just completing that work now. So that when we get to the fire department, you'll see there's a lot of zeros in the expenses, but those are, trust me, they're all spent now.
Okay,
So, yeah,
so the year-to-date that we're seeing on these sheets,
is
Are
from
it-
probably September, August,
September.
even August in some of the numbers.
Okay.
Particularly in the solid waste contract for the RDN. That's probably 71,000 a quarter is what the actuals are coming in at, and I had to chase them for the June bill, and they still haven't issued September yet, so
Okay.
I'm waiting for those bills.
okay, yeah, because there's quite a few ones where I've circled the discrepancy between, and it's quite a number, but if you're going back and it's only for the third quarter or whatnot, then you're still missing a whole quarter of finances.
Yeah, yeah,
And-
and, you know, chasing, I try to chase them down as best I can. Working with the deputy, we go through the trial balance now probably once a month, just to make sure that we're caught up and that the allocations have been done correctly.
Perfect, thank you for clarifying that for me, that actually helps with a lot of my questions. Okay, I'll let somebody else jump in, and I may have a few more afterwards.
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Lerner.
Yes, just, I found the page I was looking at before, and then one of these questions might have to be referred in camera to a future date. But I'm just noting it's page 10 of our agenda package, the original agenda package, under item B as in Bravo, where it says, items identified to increase revenues and decrease expenses. And that's where it says fire safe rebate end program, $10,000. And so I wasn't sure if that was the reflective address signs or not. And then the other one was animal control, and it talks about a change in contract. So that might have to go in camera at a future budget meeting, but I did just have some questions about what was meant by that. So I'll leave that there. Thank you.
Yeah, through staff, or can you provide any comment on that?
Yeah, actually, the fire safe rebate program, when I spoke to the fire chief, he said that that was a council-initiated program, that this was, I don't believe it was the signs. The signs appear someplace else. And then the animal control, there was a reduction in the, contract, so we could knock out we can reduce that by 10,000. So that was what Director Robinson had pointed out to me when I was asking everybody, where can we get money?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
For your question regarding this signage, the fire chief wrote me back and said, we have run this program for the last 2 years at $10,000 a year. All the signs have been posted, have been delivered or picked up for the year.
All right, through to council, any further questions? Go ahead, Councillor Jones.
Thank you. Just a quick question, please, on the administration wages and benefits, page 3 of 14, bottom line in the first block. Wages regular. And the number that I'm wondering about is the 2026 budget. It's higher than 2024. Oh gosh, going back, I guess, in our term, wages and benefits have gone up, if I understand this correct, from 757,000 and change to 817,000 and change proposed for next year. And does that include proposed new hires?
The 840,000 in the pink column is, that
sure.
includes the proposed position that would have increased there. So, yeah, the 757 in 2022, which is the actual, and then in 2026, which is the 840.
Thank you.
Any further questions before we move on? Go
Yeah,
ahead.
Councillor Savage?
Okay, just 2 seconds, Councillor Savage. Go ahead, Councillor Mundell. Yeah, you got to use that raise hand feature, Councillor Savage, if you can find it. But yeah, I have you down next. So Councillor Mundell, and then you.
Okay. On page 6 of 14, just under the general fund, transportation services, admin, wages, benefits, is that whole section, is that RDN? Or what, where does this go?
Transportation services, so I'll clarify that. That's not transit, that is transportation, so that's roads, sidewalks, all that stuff is in there. So that's where you'll find your storm drainage, your roads and sidewalks. So transit is in a different, so the transit buses that run around won't appear on our, that's what I think you're getting at, right? Because the RDN provides the buses, correct?
So
So
mostly,
that would be on their budget sheets, so.
okay. So mostly the section I'm just interested in is the wages. And I was just curious, like, is that, so if I'm hearing you correctly, that wages then is going to Public Works?
Correct.
Okay, so this is a part, so Public Works pieces will be sort of broken up into all these different transportation facilities.
Exactly, yeah, and you'll find some of it in parks as well.
Okay. Just on the next page, unless anybody else wants to jump in. Okay, next page at the top, there's equipment operation and maintenance. I see that there's a line item for small tools and equipment. And then there's also one for minor equipment. And I just was curious, probably would be, not sure you can answer this, but maybe the Public Works Department would know what the difference is there.
We're probably going to be making minor equipment inactive and moving to small tools and equipment.
I see. It doesn't seem to be much associated with the minor one, so I just was confused with, yeah, the line item there. Okay, yeah, and I had a question. What position is this? And that, obviously, you just answered in the parks one that that's Public Works included. Perfect. Okay, I think that's it for me for now.
Okay, Counselor Savage?
Thank you. So the first one with the signs for the fire department. Previously, the fire chief had told us that he was hoping to get a grant for the signs to handle the last, so everyone has a sign eventually, the address signs. However, if he fails to get that grant, I would certainly want to see the $10,000 continuing. It's a small amount. We've got quite a few people in Lantzville with signs, but I'd like to see everyone with one. And we get a full amount of people requesting them every batch we get. So that's the first thing. The second thing, I'm sorry if I missed the maintenance technician too. I may have come on late to the meeting, but with that, did I hear correctly that that's someone that would be paid out of user fees, sewer and water user fees? And what is the point of the maintenance technician too, please? What are they going to do?
Okay, through to staff?
So the maintenance technician 2 is a water operator, so they'll be working in water and sewer, so the utilities. So the purpose of having a tech 2 is to give us some continuity if anything happens to our current water operator, so that we're doing a, sorry, Delcy, I forget, succession planning for our water operator right now. And to make sure that he's covered. So
Yeah.
that's what and he will be covered by user fees for water and sewer.
Okay, just hold on.
Okay.
Counselor Savage, just hold on, please. CEO Lasher?
Just to answer your second question regarding the reflective signs, the fire chief said no one is waiting at this time, and there was no grant. It was funded from the one-time projects. There is a possibility of applying to the Gen 911 grant for 2026 in order to keep the program going, but no one is waiting on a wait list right now, number one. And regarding the water operator 3, so we only have one water operator 3, and we have a level 3 plant. And what happens is when your water operator level 3 retires, which I've seen happen with us in the past elsewhere, is then you need to have another level 3 when they retire for succession planning, or you end up without that ticket, if that makes sense, because we have 2 people with level 2 tickets, but we only have 1 with a level 3. And if you have a level 3 water plant, you have to have a level 3 operator, and it requires thousands of hours. So it can become very expensive if you don't have that.
Okay, thank you for that. Counselor Savage?
Yes, thank you. So, yeah, with the signs, it's usually when we fund it, we start the campaign or the advertising that we have them available, then we take orders. So generally, the orders don't come in until we announce that. And with the maintenance 2 person, we already hired another QP Public Works person, and it was with the agreement that was the complete expectation of council. This person would be doing 80% of their time for machine work. And I'm not prepared to move on from that like nothing happened, because they're not doing 80% of their time with machine work. So for my money, I would want the next QP hire to be an actual machine worker. And I don't know what this QP worker is doing that we hired. It's an extra body. We hired an extra person last year or the year before. And could I get an explanation on that, please, what they're doing? And when is council going to get their 80% machine work? I would think the next QP worker we'd want would be a machine operator. So is there someone that could answer that, please?
Yeah, through to Director Wells, go ahead.
Thank you. Through Councillor Savage. That position, council did talk about having it do machine work 80% of the time. I do understand. Operationally, it's not efficient or feasible to have one person in Public Works on a machine 4 days a week. So depending on how their operational week shakes out, it could be 0 or it could be 100%. It just really depends on what they're doing. So he works as part of a team with the rest of the crew, and they have to just figure that out as their assignments come up. So we do put that person operating machinery when it's necessary, but it's not necessarily 80% of the time.
Okay, thank you. Well, we can leave that to when we have the debate, but it was 100% council expectation. We would not have hired them otherwise. That we only hired them to get all these pathways and trails done along the roadside for pedestrian safety, but we can leave that till the debate. And the next one, please, is with there's a line item that was called tax stabilization. And the only reason we bundled some of these line items into new bylaws was because it was not appropriate and it was unacceptable to have bylaws that weren't properly done. So we changed the bylaws, but the idea of leaving all the line items the same was to make sure we could compare from year to year. And this has to do with election expenses. And we were told last term by our corporate director, the main reason for the tax stabilization reserve fund was to pay for elections. And here before they were about 36,000 a year, and now they're purportedly going up to 45,000. But whatever was in our line item of the tax stabilization, that amount last year was supposed to, all of it, supposed to be going to election expenses. So there was a fair amount in there, not perhaps quite up to 45,000, but it would be somewhat close to that. So my hope is we're just topping up that account to cover the election expenses and not putting in the full 45,000. And the next one, please, is with the taxation, including grants in lieu. Is it possible to get a figure, please, for our next meeting that has just taxation without the grants in lieu? Because again, for consistency of knowing how much our tax requisition is going up each year, we've generally had it without the grants in lieu, and it was I forget the exact figure, it was 3 million tax requisition last year. Would be great, thank you. And my other question, please, is on page 7 of the agenda, it's got on the second section there, salaries, wages, and benefits going up a change of 336,000 thereabouts. Yet on the block of information above that, it's got a lesser amount for it's got 2026 changes staff. It's got 299 increase versus the 336 below. Is there a reason for the two differences there?
So let's go back to your first question. So your first question was with regard to the transfer from the tax stabilization reserve. The tax stabilization reserve in your 2025 plan showed the $30,000 coming all from the tax stabilization reserve. With consulting with Councillor Wells, it was found that the 30,000 was estimated to not be enough, so we increased it from 30,000 in the expenses to 45,000. She's attended a number of trainings on this, and she feels that the 45,000 is what's required. And we match that with the tax stabilization withdrawal, so that 100% of that is coming from the tax stabilization reserve. If council wishes that to be partially covered with taxation, that can be part of the debate. That's the first question. The second question I will get you the number for the taxation, not including grants in lieu, but the taxation has included grants in lieu in the financial statements, so I thought it would be better to match that against what is being published in the financials so that council could just see the one number. But if you wish it to have it without the grants in lieu, that would be fine. And sorry, your third question again, sir?
I was just curious, I could be wrong here, but it's got, on page 7, there's 2 blocks of information, and at the top line of the second block, it says 2026 change of staff, and it's got 336,000 thereabouts for salary, wages, and benefits, so a 336,000 increase.
Okay.
And then at the information on the top block, it's got taxation for 2026 change of staff as 299 thereabouts. So,
So, okay, so what I was trying to do when I developed the budget was to show the 2026 original financial plan number that was given last year to council. The next column, which is the changes that staff have made to the budget. And eventually I will put in another column for council directed changes. So when council does a cut, then we'll put them in as council directed changes. So right now, staff have been the only ones making changes, but as council goes through and says this or that needs to be adjusted, then I'll put in another column for council changes so that they can be highlighted there for council's reference. If you would like me to remove the word staff, and if that makes it more clear right now, I can definitely do that. But it's just in the wording. It's not that the 299,000 directly offsets the changes for the wages. It's that the revenue has changed and that the staffing costs have changed. It's not, the two aren't directly associated. One is just the total of the revenue is offset by the total of the expenses, which then you get, the $385,000 of revenue change is directly offset by the $385,000 of expense change.
oh, gotcha. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And last quick question for me, please, is with animal control, it's a great deal. With the RDN, it's, I believe, around $10,000 we pay for animal control. And what are the implications here? Like if the district takes it over, what happened the last time is we had a sweetheart deal with the RDN. It was about $36,000 for all our bylaw enforcement. And then when the last council decided they wanted their own, it's gone up considerably from that. So my concern is that if we take over animal control, it might start at 10,000, but then it could go up and up and up, depending on, all the animal control that's needed. So could you speak to a bit about that? Who would handle this? Would this be our current bylaw person, and would they be paid 10,000 extra to do this, or just what this sort of the story is, please?
Director Robbins, oh, sorry. Yeah, Elsie.
Sorry, through Councillor Savage. So there's 2 separate contracts here. So animal control is its own contract. And then we have I'll call it general bylaw enforcement. So the animal control contract, we decide how much that service is provided. So if council wanted to adjust that, then we could change the level of service that we're receiving. And then the same with the general bylaw enforcement.
Yes, right. Yes, that's right. It was through the RDM, but I think it was a separate entity that they contracted out, the RDN contracted out for animal control. So anyway, thank you. We can leave that to when we debate it, I guess, to see what's the best route forward there. And thanks very much.
Okay, so I've got a speakers list, so I have Councillor Lerner and then Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just sorry, I think I maybe spoke in a way that was confusing. The way I read this, we are staying with the exact same animal control provider in the sense that we are not changing who's providing animal control. We're just adjusting the number of hours in our contract. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so we're staying with the same provider. The second thing, when it comes to page 7 in the agenda, I was also confused by that, but I just want to make sure I understand correctly. The top block, that entire top block is revenue. The entire bottom block is expenses. The column that says 2026 changes dash staff does not mean changes to staffing, as in the number of staff, or it just or the positions, it just means those are changes to the budget made by staff.
Correct.
Okay, perfect. And so then when it says 299, 192, that's the increase in taxation. And then when it says 336, 753, that's the proposed increase of wages and benefits, including everything. So that includes QP, exempt, new hires. Those are all the proposed changes.
Those are all the proposed change, it's not the difference between 2025 and the revised 2026.
Right.
It's just what we've done to change the budget.
Right. Okay. Nope, that makes sense now. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Jones?
Yes, thank you. This gets back to the position Councillor Savage was talking about earlier when we hired a new public works person to spend 80% of their time on trails along the roads, and as well as brush cutting. So I just want to address the brush cutting side of it, please. In 2024, the actual bill for brush cutting was a little over 30,000. I think we actually had 40,000 in the budget, but regardless of that, when we look at 2025 year to date, the actual is 16,475, and the reason I bring this up when talking about the new public works hire was that we felt we could save a lot of money by doing this in-house rather than contracting it out. So I'm not exactly sure whether the brush cutting hasn't been done or was it contracted out and that's appearing in another column. And the reason I ask that is because we have had a little bit of discussion before indicating that there may not be really the proper equipment for brush cutting. And so if I look at 2026 revised budget, it's back up to 34,680, which I'd like to conclude means that we're now doing it in-house. And it depends on clarification on the contracted out amount. And if so, for us to do it in-house, there may be a need to purchase some new equipment. So is that somewhere in the budget also, or maybe the story unwinds a bit differently from the way I understood it?
Okay, Director Spola?
Thank you, Your Worship. So the ditching and brush cutting, we actually switched contractors. The contractor that we had been originally with in 2024 would do one pass for the 30,000. We retained a different contractor this year, and they were doing it for half the price. So we're actually planning to do 2 passes for brush cutting. The equipment that was purchased, that is being used on the backhoe, is good for moving in one direction. But because of the way that the backhoe works and the way this piece of equipment attaches, you're either, you drive facing one way, and then you'd have to put out your outriggers, stabilize the machine, and move through, and it's not as efficient as the contract work. They are using the brush cutter, but in the parks. So the parks are receiving, because of the way the operations is, and in some places it's not safe to put your outriggers down because you would tip the machine when you went to articulate the brush cutter. So in some places it just wouldn't work. So they've actually are still using the piece that was bought for them last year, but we found that it was efficient to maintain the ditches with, using the new contractor. It was more cost effective, and it got through the community quicker because they have the ditch cutting equipment necessary to do the job in a safe and quick manner.
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Jones.
Yes, so then we hired somebody to do brush cutting and trail. It sounds like decision's been made that it's less expensive to continue to contract out the brush cutting. Did I understand that correctly?
It takes the current contractor a week to move through, is my understanding.
I know that the equipment we have at the moment is poor, but a person was hired to do this in-house. Has that been abandoned by staff? At one point, we're expecting a request for a piece of equipment, so this hire could do the work that he was expecting to do.
Sorry, Councillor Wells had mentioned that the person that was hired had been put into a work plan that was maintained by the previous Director of Public Works.
Yes, I understand that. That was about a year after he was hired into the position. But I do understand that has happened. Yeah. We'll talk about this. This might not be the best time, but that just clarifies what the plan is with the brush cutting and explains those numbers to me. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Director Wells.
We were just actually going through some of the motions that council had passed during the last budget discussion. So just as a reminder with respect to the maintenance tech, so there was a motion about the 80% of the time being spent on the machine, but after council discussed it, that motion had been defeated. And that was because staff did explain at that time that it wasn't feasible to schedule the person that way. So just as a reminder is all.
Okay, thank you. I was gonna make comment to that, but go ahead, Councillor Lerner, and then I'm gonna speak.
Yeah, I have some stuff that I'd like to discuss about that, but I think it might be best to refer that in camera because there's certain items that were discussed in camera that I can only repeat in camera. So just if it's okay, maybe at our next budget meeting, we could have an in-camera portion where we could discuss that particular item. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. My comment, it's more of a comment and maybe a motion can be struck, I'm not sure, but you know, it's, you know, obviously it's our function as a council to approve budgets and to essentially give our staff a certain buckets of money to go and do certain things with. And with operator 2 position, that was one of those buckets. Once we've approved that bucket of money, it's now staff's responsibility to figure out, you know, how to use that money and to the best of their ability to benefit the municipality. So, you know, for me, I'd rather, you know, this keeps coming up and I understand why, but I think we keep having the same kind of discussion around it. But I think what may put it to rest is just simply getting some kind of written report back, just stating what is the operational direction for this operator 2 position. I think I'm using the right lingo, operator 2, is it not? Or what are we even calling it? Maintenance 2 position?
The title is Maintenance Technician 2.
Okay, maintenance technician 2. Okay, I always thought of it as an operator 2 position, but it's just burnt to my brain. But it'd be good just to have something for all of council to reference that clearly articulates what that position does and really who's in charge of that position. Because ultimately what it funnels or comes down to is our CAO that's in charge of that position. And our CEO will direct, you know, whoever the lead or the head of the Public Works Department is to utilize that position and approve the work plans and so forth. So once we approve that budget, all we can hope for is that money is being utilized very well by our administration. So that's it. So, Councillor Lerner.
Maybe if I can take a crack at a motion?
Yeah, sure, if you want to get one on the floor, sure.
Okay. The council directs staff to provide a report on the work assignment of the maintenance technician 2 position. And further that the budget item be referred in camera for the next budget meeting of council.
Second by Counselor Jones, and then for discussion, go ahead, Counselor Lerner.
Yeah, I think it's fine to get a report, but there's specific things I can't say that we discussed previously in camera. So I think if we can just refer this also to the next budget meeting in an in-camera portion, then we can have a discussion about that. Thank you.
Counselor Jones.
Yes, through to staff, please, if that report can not speak just about the dollars that's been assigned to specific items, but also to the manpower, so that there can be the connection. We will have to talk at a future time about this position, the 80%, the 20%, we can talk about all that, but we need to be able to separate labor from money, because there's still a body there, right? Doing something, and unfortunately, the work that we had hoped to be done was very high on our strategic priorities. So I think we need to look carefully at both sides of that coin. Thank you.
Any further comment, debate on that?
Yes, Councillor Savage?
Go ahead, Counselor Savage.
Yes, I certainly support this, but there's part of this that's not in camera item, and that's when we hire someone to do X and they do Y. That's not council direction. It's as simple as that. And it's clear as a bell to me. We hired the person for one reason and it wasn't done. So if that's an in-camera discussion, that's fine. But it's council's opinion that counts here, not a staff report. So if a staff report's fine as to what they're doing, but the important thing to me is that the absolute clear as a bell direction of council's fulfilled. That's the key thing here. So thank you.
Okay, CEO Lasher.
Councillor Savage, the motion got defeated on July 24th, July 31st, 2024. The motion you've brought up was defeated.
Yes, I'm completely aware of that, but we'll discuss it in camera. We were given point blank assurances outside of the motion, and I'll say in camera why we did that. So it's as clear as a bell, council's intent, but let's leave it for in camera. Thank you.
Okay, so can we have the motion read back, please? I'm just making sure.
I have it if you, okay. So the motion was that council directs staff to provide a report on the work assignment of the maintenance technician 2 position, and further that the item be referred in camera for the next budget discussion.
Okay. I have no major issues with the motion itself. I just don't know if we need to really direct if it goes in camera or not. I think it's, I think staff would make that determination for us, kind of thing. If it in fact does qualify for in-camera discussion. I understand there have been discussions in camera around this whole topic, but you know, we're in an open meeting now, and moving forward, it's very much in the public domain. It's just a matter of, yeah, I understand, Councillor Lerner. Yeah, it's just distracting when your hand keeps coming up. So, yeah, so I just think it's, well, I think it's best just to leave it to staff to make the determination what parts stay in the open and what parts would need to be in camera for discussion. Councillor Lerner.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to distract there. If it's helpful, I'm happy to add that it would be referred in camera under section 90, subsection 1, subsection C, labor relations or other employee relations. And the reason is basically that there was something very specific that was discussed with regard to a contract negotiation, and so I can only talk about that in camera, and it's specific to this item, so that's why. But maybe the easiest way is if this motion passes, I can just send to our Director of Corporate Administration the item I want to discuss, and then the director can determine if it belongs in camera.
Sure. Counselor Jones?
Yes, thank you. Another item, it's also on page 7 under storm drainage culvert maintenance. It's very important in our community with all the ditches and culverts, this maintenance.
So,
I
sorry to
know.
interrupt you, Counselor Jones.
So-
Is this related to the motion that's on the floor?
Oh, my apologies, no.
Okay. All right, so unless there's anything further, I'm gonna call the question. Okay, all those in favor and opposed? I'm assuming everybody's in favor, so it's carried unanimously, so thank you. Go ahead, Counselor Jones.
Thank you. Back to page 7. So just to understand further, because this is a very important part of the infrastructure in our community, is our ditches and our culverts. And what I was noticing is that in 2024, the culvert maintenance was at 58,000 and something. Sorry, I've got a line through it, can't read the rest of the numbers, but around 58,000, that will do. This year, the actual to date is about just over a third of that, which concerns me. But I'm sure that staff can sort of shed some light on it if you would, that would be great. And then for 2026, going up to 46,800. So that number certainly is closer to reflecting the 2024 and previous numbers. But if you could expand on this, please. Hoping we're not
Yeah,
going to have
through to
plugged ditches
Director
this
Spola,
year.
go ahead.
So the culvert maintenance was raised to $12,120. This is for the parts and supplies that the guys need to do the work. This is the in-house work that we do. This was an item that was cut last year, and we've brought it back up to reflect the averages. The 28,000, I can't explain that. That was likely just additional gravel or maybe a small culvert. The major culvert work that you see getting done appears in the capital schedules because those are full replacements. So we do have a number of culverts that are slated in the capital for future discussion. I went over this with the previous, with Matt Woods, and he did outline that he did want a $6,000 increase in this area. So this is what I went through with the foreman.
Yeah, go ahead.
Follow up if I
Yeah.
can. Sorry, I'm trying to follow all that, and I'm not totally sure that I did. The first thing is just the definition of culvert maintenance. I admit I had been thinking of things like getting, brush and deadfall that's fallen into the ditches, out of the ditches because it's blocking the culvert. But did you say, no, this is all a budget for in shop?
Well, this would be for the men to go out and buy gravel and to do maintenance, like in-house maintenance on the culverts themselves. So this would be like granular materials if they needed the culvert, like if they needed a small pipe or whatever it is that they needed to maintain that item. Men jumping into the ditch, that's covered under wages. So that's where the majority of your expenses exist for culvert maintenance for the in-house stuff.
Thank you, that answers the question.
Does that help?
Yeah, I get it now, so, yes, they're being maintained, but that's within wages, so we don't have a breakdown of that or anything, we just know that that's being done.
Yeah, the wages as a whole for Public Works, it's under
Yeah.
the admin wages benefits on page 6, about halfway down.
Right, it would be interesting to know how much of a wage goes into that, does it take a full man a year to maintain our culverts, or does it take a tenth of that? I'm just curious, that's all, so that
yeah.
could be for another day.
So I also did get from Matt, he gave me the estimated hours that go into the ditching, so I'm going to provide that to Director Wells as part of maybe her report, or my report maybe. We're going to work on it together. Yeah, her report. back to council per Councillor Lerner.
Thank you.
Motion.
That would be excellent, and in particular because it goes right to our strategic priorities under several things, asset management being one of them, and maintaining green infrastructure being another. So I know we want to look at that in more detail. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so through the council, anything further before we move on in the agenda?
Councillor Savage,
Yeah, go
please.
ahead, Councillor Savage.
Yes, thank you. So just a few items here with operational. And first with ditching, the impetus behind that was we were somewhat at the, when the costs would go up with this sort of thing. So when they reached up to $45,000, we said, hey, we can use this to pay half the wage of a machine operator. That was the whole idea of taking over the ditching, was to pay the wage of the machine operator and to do it in-house. If it does take a capital expense for the machinery, it's well worth it. It's paid off after a few years, and then you're keeping it in-house to pay, a good part of the wage of the QP machine operator. That was the background of the ditching. That's why I understand why Councillor Jones wants to get that down to completely in-house, because that's part of the savings that pays the wage of this person we hired. And the next thing, please, was sales of service. My understanding it's such things as building inspection and adjudicating OCP amendment applications and that sort of thing. I think I'm correct there. And I see it's going up. Is that correct? It's going up by $97,000 anticipated in 2026?
Just, can you refer me to the page, please, Councillor?
Yeah, that's page 7, the top block, line 2.
7. Oh, okay. Okay, sorry. He's on the, thank you, yeah. Sale of services. Sorry, I didn't mean to do that. I'd have to go through and get the breakdown for that, but yes, that's the summary of what we have looked at as sales of service. That could be anything from utilities through to business licenses, as you say. It's the things that we sell in-house. So building inspections is part of that sale of service. There's quite a large number of items that fit under that category.
Yes, and does that generally go into operating surplus? We defined it last year. It was called so many different things, the general accumulated operating surplus. But now I believe it's just called either accumulated surplus or operating surplus. It was defined last year, so we finally had a formal name for it.
Okay,
But
just 2
does that
seconds, Councillor
amount?
Savage, so we're going to let Director Spola answer. Go ahead, Director Spola.
Okay, so all items under the general fund that are left over when you have a surplus are called the operating surplus, and that's an annual term when you have an operating surplus. Accumulated operating surplus is for every year that you've existed. That's the accumulation of all your surplus and deficits go into one number. So that's the difference between those two numbers. And then you have a restricted reserve as well that you call the general surplus reserve. So, and that has an annual transfer. So I'll just throw that in there too, because you've heard us talk about it so many times. I can see where, it gets a bit confusing as to which one's which.
Okay, so it goes into operating surplus then. Thank you.
It's a net number though. It's netted against the expenses. So all the revenue that you have for operating is netted against all the operational expenses and transfers to reserves. And then whatever left over, that's what goes into your accumulated surplus for the year-over-year changes.
Yeah, so it helps offset taxes then.
It's just a different source of revenue for you. Like, like if you wanted to say that your sale of business licenses offsets your planning costs, and then you don't have to raise as much in taxes because you have more revenue in planning than you had before, then you could say that, but it's not entirely, you know, what I would say. It's not 100% offset.
Yes, because it's hard to predict what it's going to be each year, so that's why it goes into surplus, right? So the next one on page 7 is in the second block. On the second line, contracted services, there shows an increase of 156,000 there. Could you explain that, please?
So the major increases are the election expenses at 45, legal at 16, and repairs at 33,750.
Okay, and so getting back to just to speak to those then, thank you for reminding me about the legal. So because legal was 16,000 over our 70 or 75 budget, whatever it was this year, you're saying the plan is for next year to increase legal by 16,000?
Yeah, in addition to what had been predicted, we're requesting another $16,000. That's correct.
Okay, we can discuss that during the debate. I'd certainly like to keep it at what it was before. And the election, sorry, I might have missed what you said on that, but the tax stabilization line item we had previously for that reserve had, you know, it was 20, 25, 30,000, I think thereabouts in it. So would that not come off the 45,000, or are you planning to increase taxes by that amount this year?
So if you go to page 2 of the multicolored page, the big pages,
Yeah,
page 2, and you go to the second to last block, you'll see the transfer from, it's called transfer from equity carry forward. So originally there was 30,000 in there, and that covered the election. So I've increased to offset 100%, and that'll be a transfer from the tax stabilization reserve. Will be that line. So I've used 100% of the tax stabilization reserve to not increase taxes for the election expenses. So I'm using that reserve as council had intended in the policy.
Oh, great. Well, thanks for that, explaining that. You may have said that previously, so sorry I didn't quite get that the first time. Thanks for clarifying that. And then the last one, please, is right below that line under contracted service. It's got materials and supplies. Just wondering what that 33,000 increase reflects, please?
I'll have to look that up for you. I did not break that down.
Yeah, and thank you. And sorry, you mentioned 3 things: legal, 16,000, election. What was the third one you said on the
Road repairs.
road repairs? Okay, great. All right. Well, thank you very much. Much appreciated for all your work on that. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Jumping around. Okay, so is everybody satisfied with 7A at this point? Okay, moving on. So we're on to recommendations. I don't know if there's anything further to discuss through to Director Sepola. So this is technically 7B in the agenda, but I think we've covered.
If council has no other questions on the report, then it's just accepted for information. And 7B then would be the smaller spreadsheet with the recommendations for increases to revenue and decreases to expenses. Is that where your worship was meaning?
Yeah, I think that's where we're headed next. So
Okay.
page 8 of the agenda, yeah.
Yeah.
So, sorry?
Yeah, point of information, maybe
Sure.
even saying 2 times where we're going, because we're moving around from not just the paper documents here to the agenda here, but also I think some people are looking at an online version with, might be referencing a bit differently. So just saying I need a little more time to get caught up. Are we looking at page 8 now, if you don't mind? Is that what I just
Well,
read?
I think it's page,
Yeah, the report starts on page 8, and then page 10 would be the attachment.
Sorry, you didn't have your microphone on, I don't think. What did you say?
Sorry, yes, so we're, page 8 is the next report, and that's the 2006 draft operating financial plan changes recommendations
okay,
that your worship was referring to. And then page 10 of item B shows an attachment that details the changes that are being brought forward to council. These changes add up to an impact on tax collection reduction of 2.6% from the original 6.5% that had been requested by administration.
Councillor Lerner, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Okay, so this is the page I was looking at before. So I guess I jumped ahead a little bit, my apologies. On item B, page 10 of the agenda, this is, I'm glad we're finding savings that of $86,000 net savings. My only thought is I'm fine to receive it tonight as information. I may still want to think about, for example, the address sign and bringing that back, because I know that it's currently listed as negative 10,000. And then, but if we can get a grant to offset that, we could keep the 10,000 savings. So I'll leave it there, but I'm fine to receive this as information. It's basically all the things we already discussed earlier tonight, I guess.
Okay, Councillor Jones.
Yes, I agree, and also when we do talk, if staff could speak a little bit to Costin Hall rental, just to get an idea where it's at now, how that's worked with existing users, what kind of volume has come in of new users, and just to see that picture more fully would be great. Thank you.
Okay. Any additional questions?
Councillor Savage?
Go ahead, Councillor Mundell, and then Councillor Savage.
Just wondering if there's any consideration in here, and maybe this is a council discussion and motion, but I don't see us charging for bylaw and actually using fines as a way of also increasing revenue and adding to our revenue side of the budget. When I looked up Nanaimo, they have a very healthy fine system, which adds to their annual budget. So I just wondered if that's something that maybe we need to consider.
Yeah, go ahead, Director Wells, yeah.
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Mundell. So obviously, with Nanaimo being so much larger than the District of Lantzville, they're going to have a much higher revenue with their fine systems than we can. And the other thing about fines is that it costs a lot of money to issue the fines. So then there's always that offset with the staffing that you have to use in order to go out and issue the tickets. So it's not much of a revenue generator in the end of the day. And also in the District of Lantzville, we don't have the same ticketing legislation that we use here as the city of Nanaimo does. So we have what's called the municipal ticket system here, and that means that it's a much more difficult to collect the fines essentially. So there is a new way to do bylaw enforcement now with new legislation, but that would require an entirely separate project for staff to be able to introduce that here. So there's not really a lot of opportunity in that area for the District of Lantzville right now.
Just follow up on that.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I guess then my follow-up question would be, why are we paying for a bylaw officer then? So if we have a bylaw officer that has no teeth to actually hold people accountable to the bylaw infractions that they're involved in, I guess I don't understand the point of having a bylaw enforcement system if you have no way to actually enforce it and have people held to account.
Okay, I think I'll kind of interject there. It's more of a, that's probably more of a question for staff, or sorry, to debate with council as opposed to getting staff into
Fair
them
enough.
putting forward their opinion on, you know, what's required and not required and so on. But it is a good question, you know, like if we can't enforce or do we enforce and, you know, I think is, and staff can probably speak to this, like what they do, which is, you know, respond to bylaw complaints and they bring people into compliance. Now, there's not always, well, and staff can speak to it, but I believe there's a number of number of files that, you know, are opened and they are closed because people are being brought into compliance. But they're just not getting hit with the stick with respect to having to pay a hefty fine. So, you know, that's just the approach we're taking. Now, if council doesn't like that approach and they don't think that's you know, there's a good service level being offered, then that's something for us to debate and figure out. But maybe staff at some point can bring a report back saying how many files do we have in Lantzville in 2025, or go back to 2024, and how many were brought into compliance and closed because there was, you know, I guess peaceful resolution resolution achieved. So so there are things happening. I think that's what it comes down to. But really, I think the debate belongs with council. Councillor, oh, sorry, I have Councillor Savage and then Councillor Jones.
Yes, thank you. So on this page that we're on, item B, with the savings, I'm just wondering, please, if you could just comment on three of them. Recovery from reserves, 9,000. What does that mean, please, as a potential cost savings?
We can use the general surplus reserve for garbage can replacements. So we have a number of garbage cans in the parks that are needing replacement, and we can begin to use general surplus or the one-time projects for the garbage can replacement program. That is something that was highlighted by Matt for use, and also I believe he mentioned that some of the trails needed additional garbage cans, just to get more people to not leave garbage along the trail system. You know, if you know there's a garbage can that's going to come up in the next half mile, you're more likely to hang on to it than toss it off. So.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, in Japan, they don't have any garbage cans. The people are so responsible. But the next one, admin advertising, is just 3,000. But what does that mean, please?
We're suggesting that there is a bylaw that needs to be passed for advertising requirement changes. I spoke with Director Wells on this, and once the bylaw is passed and we reduce our newspaper advertising, we can reduce that advertising budget by $3,000.
Oh, I remember that. Yes, thank you for that. And solid waste, add to reflect 10%, $40,000. More research to be done. What does that mean, please?
When I was going through the Nanaimo bylaw, I pulled the billings and I pulled the user fees that we're collecting in the billings. And because our user fees are reflected directly from the bylaw that we get from the RDN, going through the billings, and this is a bit of, you know, learning curve for me. I'm having to understand how the flow through goes on the solid waste collection. We get a 10% discount given to us for administration purposes for collecting that revenue on behalf of the RDN, as opposed to them billing our users directly. We do the heavy lifting, so we run the receivable list, we do the collection on all of that, and then we send them the money. They give us a 10% discount representative of admin fees. So when we spend 84,000, we get billed 84,000, and then they give me a discount of 10%. So our net cost is just under 72,000. So that should be reflected in the budget. When I was reviewing it, I want to be sure what I'm talking about, so I still have to go back to the RDN just to confirm everything, that I'm reading it correctly. But I do believe there is a large savings there because in the budget, in the original document that I was looking at for the 2026 numbers, it had them directly offset, so it was dollar for dollar. So I should see a 10% difference between those two numbers. So that's why I'm putting a $40,000 adjustment up there.
Oh, terrific. Good work. Yes, I've found things like that myself with the RDN budget. There's sometimes some things you can do there. So excellent. Well, look forward to hearing that. And that was it for my questions. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Jones?
Yes, thank you. A couple of times, the one-time project reserve has been mentioned, and we may need to discuss this at another time, but I think by motion, that's with council approval. That was certainly in the intent of it. And I want to go back, if you don't mind, to bylaw briefly. I do look forward to having a more thorough discussion about it, but through to Director Wells, you said it's a lot of work to go out and issue tickets. Is it possible that that might be done at the same time as going out and issuing what is the bylaw issue now? Is it a warning that is issued or what?
So generally speaking, what we try to do is encourage compliance as the first step. So it's always complaint driven, number one, so we don't go out looking. We respond to people who complain to us. That's what we do as a standard. But when we do go out, we do try to get voluntary compliance generally as a first step. So the bylaw enforcement officer will speak to the resident and get it sorted that way. And then if they're not able to get compliance, then we start issuing the fines. But with the volume of work required to issue fines, I just want council to understand that that's not really the focus. It's more about having order in the community generally and encouraging compliance versus using the fine system to enforce.
Thank you. So I think, council, when we have a more detailed discussion about this, one of the things we might want to look at, for example, is when we're on stage 4 water restrictions and there isn't any watering permitted of lawns. Does enforcement of that need to be complaint driven, or is that something that the bylaw officer can tend to without a complaint? So if we can tuck that one away for the future when we talk about this, that's one place we may make some money.
Councillor Lerner?
Thank you. So yeah, I know, recognizing that the purpose of the fine is usually compliance and not revenue generation, right? Because, you know, we can't issue fines necessarily to make money, but if we are paying for a bylaw officer to go out and do the work, fines can potentially offset some of that cost. So that was the first thing I wanted to take a look at as something at a future meeting. In September 2024, we were brought updates for the MTI bylaw, the Municipal Ticket Information Bylaw number 100/2012. And it was adopted in October 2024. I know at the time it was controversial because of the fact that it included fines, but basically it was bringing a whole bunch of bylaws since somewhere around 2020, 2018 that had not been, I think 2019, that had not been included in our MTI bylaw into there. And one of the reasons I voted in favor of that was so that we could collect fines. I know that if there is a need to update the system, it might be worth discussing at a future meeting with our CAO and staff and determining what the best course of action is. The other comment I just had, and again, I'm fine receiving all of this for information tonight, is with regard to the adoption of the notification bylaw, which would allow us to not advertise in the newspaper if we didn't want to. It's not, it would take it from mandatory to optional. I was actually surprised by some of the public feedback received over that, and we postponed that decision to discuss as part of the budget. And I'd still like to get into that when maybe at a future council meeting, but I'm not entirely sure if the public wants us to stop advertising in the newspaper. It would save us maybe several thousand a year, which isn't nothing. But if the public wants us to spend the money on the newspaper, and it is worth noting that local print is a fairly substantial part of the backbone of our local democracy. If people see that that is where they want our money to spend, then as a public servant, I say, okay, then that's where the public wants it spent. So I would probably, as we go into the budget and start soliciting feedback, that's one of the areas I really want to see feedback on from the public, is whether they want us to reduce newspaper spending or keep it the same. Thank you.
Councillor Jones?
Yes, it's my last thing, just a question to staff to provide us with some information going forward, and it's back to bylaw. So understanding that the bylaw is complaint-driven, then what I am interested in receiving for information is how many hours a week does the bylaw officer, is a bylaw officer employed for, or does that vary with the number of complaints, so he's really only on the clock during the time that he's responding to current complaints? And if not, could we have an idea how much time is not directly related to bylaw in that way?
Okay, CEO Lasher?
21 hours a week. He works every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
So is that he just comes in to work 21 hours a week, or is it happen that the complaints are exactly 21 hours a week?
Well, there's follow-up, right? So when you go give somebody a warning in education, you have to follow up to make sure. And then there's certain parks and areas that are part of the plan every week, certain areas, obviously, that are more troublesome.
No, I understand that. That's, my question is, he works 21 hours a week only on complaint-driven bylaw enforcement. How can that just be 21 hours a
No.
week?
Sorry to cut you off, not just complaint driven. So for example, when the unhoused are sleeping in our parks and trails, that's not complaint driven. That's part of the routine of cleaning up Lantzville, right?
Thank you, that's very helpful. And I think the lawn watering is an example, and perhaps that's why there's an awareness that there were complaints, but maybe they didn't go through bylaw about lawn watering during stage 4.
So that,
Thank you.
can I respond to that?
Yeah, go ahead,
The
yeah.
stage 4 is something that I tend to be having some experience in that area, needs to be looked at. Because there is an opportunity to possibly go from education awareness to ticketing. And there are, in my previous regional district, water ambassador kids that work every summer. So there's opportunities, and we have applied to federal grants for students this year as well, which we've never done before. The director of finance, was it two people you applied for? Yeah, for 2 people, and it was the first time we've ever done that in this district. So in my previous area, we had water ambassadors provided by the regional district, but since we've applied for grants for 2 students, it's possible we could be using them as water ambassadors or some other places.
Any additional questions? All right, so that takes us on to the next one, which is item C. So this is the 2030, draft capital financial plan. So on page 11, this is a standalone report. So through to Director Sepola, and don't know if you want to introduce this. Now we're into the capital.
Just so much to highlight to council that there were large pages that were handed out. We've got the blue one is 2026 proposed capital. They're the ones that are more solidly colored. So, it'd be like this one. And then I have different colors for different years. The summary, there was an 8.5 by 11 sheet that was the summary as well. And this is the introduction for the capital.
this. Great, thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Leonard.
Thank you. I appreciate this, and I'm just, for everyone's reference, I'm working with the summary. I believe a copy was on page 14 of our agenda, and then another slightly larger font copy was also handed out. So overall, I'm glad to see a lot of streets listed for rehabilitation over the next 4 years, including Alger and Blackjack and Dickinson and Lorenzen and Eastwind and all of these. There were some questions I mailed in as regard to timing. The one road that stood out to me was Dickinson. My recollection was that originally Dickinson had been scheduled and rescheduled multiple times. And this is item number ES 55-003 Dickinson Road Rehabilitation. And in the, I'm going to try and estimate here, spring or late summer, we were provided with a engineering sort of splice, a concept of what it would look like, and we were given different options as a council, and we chose, I think it was option A, which basically showed a road that was repaved with one side having a multi-use path on Dickinson. And it was sort of like a semi-rural trail, and we talked about potentially applying for a grant to cover part of that trail through enabling active transportation sort of stuff. And at the time it was discussed that sometime this fall we would likely get a bid, or sorry, a tender for engineering of that trail. And I think then after the engineering was awarded, it would have to come back with a full engineering, and then it would be a bid to actually do the phases. But I think we talked about it starting with that in the fall and concluding, in that ground would be broken sometime in 2026. Let's put it that way. Ground would be broken sometime in 2026. And I see here on this plan it's being pushed to 2027, and I'm not comfortable with that. That's just me personally. I think that it's been pushed a few times. I would prefer to, even if it was late 2026, to see it happen, at least start, because it's probably a 3 or 4 year project. And so the sooner it begins, the sooner we can spend today's dollars and not 2028 dollars. So anyway, I'll leave it there. I'm fine to receive that for information, but I would like to have discussion potentially after I have time to think about it. I'm moving it up a year. The other one that stood out for me, which I did email staff and council my recommended motion, and it has been printed and it's at your tables, is with regard to LI 10-001. And that is with regard to community use building B. At a previous meeting, council received a report indicating 3 options for community use building B. One was demolition, one was refurbishment, and one was replacement. And council at the time had discussed referring it to a committee of the whole. I don't know if a motion was actually made to refer it to a committee of the whole, though. But we had discussed referring it to a committee of the whole where we could discuss and just make recommendations on which of those options we want. I understand right now there is a placeholder for the least expensive option, which is demolition. My personal thought is I in no way want to see that decision made in the budget tonight. And what I want, my motion, which I don't have to make now, I can if the mayor thinks it is an appropriate time, is essentially to remove that item and just keep a placeholder there and to refer it to a committee of the whole. So I'll leave it so that we can make a decision before, with lots of public feedback, before we incorporate something actionable into the budget. So I don't know, Mayor Swain, if now is an appropriate time to make a motion or if I should leave it.
If you want to get it on the floor, that's fine.
Sure.
And we can go from there.
Thank you. Then through to council, I'll make the following motion, which is identical to what I provided. The 2026-2030 financial capital plan be amended to that item LI 10-001 parking lot expansion be removed and replaced with a placeholder for the rehabilitation, refurbishment, or replacement of community use building B and the surrounding site, and further that The future plans of community use building B and its surrounding site, including potential parking, be referred to the first committee of the whole meeting in 2026 for the committee of the whole to discuss and recommend a preferred course of action, which can then go to council and for public feedback in time for the finalization of the 2026-2030 financial plan.
Okay, seconded by Councillor Jones, and then for discussion, if you wish, Councillor Lerner.
Thank you. Just very briefly, I don't think we've made a decision on what to do with this, and I think it's going to have big implications for the community. Excuse me, the site could be completely demolished and it could be integrated into the area, but that might not be what the community wants. And so while it would be considerably more expensive, that is a valuable piece of land where something very, very nice could be done, including either refurbishing that building, replacing it with something completely different, which could include working with partners, whether it is a housing project, a library project, a RDN project. There's so many opportunities for rec space, or other things. And we had also at the time discussed that there were plans for parking in that area. And do we want to have parking around the building? Do we want to connect it with a trail to the park? So my thought is let's refer this to a committee of the whole. We will have a fulsome discussion and then have community feedback before we finalize the financial plan. Thank you.
Councillor Jones.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Lerner, for bringing this. I agree completely. I mean, committee of the whole meeting would be excellent for this. Just for us to ponder in the meantime, there have been discussions in the past about creating more of a park using the community green space, which is behind Coston Hall, and connecting it to Huddlestone Park. So when people come and use that space, which eventually will be usable by the community again, they, have the option to move nicely to the park. It's could be very nice, especially if you've got coffee offered somewhere and some chairs. And then the other thing is with community input, I wonder if we just want to have a quick discussion about the timing of getting information out to the community with the deadlines that staff has for the community update. Because if we don't have that discussion now and we wait to the committee of the whole, we've already missed something going out if we wanted to in the January community update. Maybe we leave this motion as it is for now, and then we talk about the communication a bit and whether the update might want to have a little something in it.
Okay, I was going to speak to it next, and then for additional speakers, for the speakers list, and Councillor Mundell. What about yourself, Councillor Savage? Do you want to speak to this? Eventually? No? Okay, then I get Councillor Lerner. Yeah, for myself, I'm fine with supporting the motion. My thoughts or for this anyways, is how do we kind of move forward, not slowly, but maybe a little bit, to really kind of move forward into the planning phase of what to do next. So my thoughts along this would be to probably try and hold and a couple town hall meetings as opposed to just kind of bringing it back to a committee of the whole, because it's going to come back to a committee of the whole, and then we're just going to look at each other and go, well, what does the public want? Or maybe we just have a few people in the public that are in our ears telling us what they want, but we're not getting that representation of the public. So I think a couple town halls would be a good way of kind of getting a lot of information in short order for us to consider. And then we can move into, how do we best move forward planning and garnering even more information. But I think one thing's for sure, like spending $1 million on rehabbing that building is just, we're just no position to do that. Fortunately, we were supplied with our reserve balances, and we have all these big ticket items in the district, and I just can't imagine throwing away $1 million on saving the front of that building. We can save the front by just, cleaving it off, but putting something brand new behind it. You can have the facade of the building remain. Actually, when I was in Ottawa or Toronto, I can't remember last, I took a picture of a big historic building where they're doing that. They do it all the time. You know, so if it's about maintaining, you know, the appearance of having something historic in our community, there's much cheaper and more responsible ways of going about it. But, you know, putting $1 million into a building that's toast, I just don't think I can get behind at all. So I would like to take to the community, do you know, blast the community with a couple town halls, get a lot of information back rapidly for us to deal with and get this thing moving forward. It's just, we're just dragging our heels. It's a lot of inaction. So Councillor Mandel, and then back to Councillor Lerner.
Yeah, I think I can support this because of the hefty list. If you look at the sheet, the item C sheet that we've been given, there, it's chock-a-block full of potential projects on the list, and I think we're gonna have to go through and pick and choose what we can do this year, and I'm happy to consider that one as one of the ones we take off, because I mean, if you look at next year's projected capital expenditures, and obviously it's gonna change as the year goes on, but this year is heavily weighted, so we need to start looking at some ones we can get off. So I think this is one of them.
Councillor Lerner.
Thank you. I agree with all the comments that have been said, and I like the idea of town halls and communication plan as well that Councillor Jones mentioned and Mayor Swain's mention of town halls. The reason I did committee of the whole was because I didn't think tonight at a budget meeting was necessarily appropriate to do motions related to town halls and all of those communication pieces. So the purpose of the committee of the whole referral is for us to have that discussion and say, well, we want to have X number of town halls, and we want to, what do we want to present at the town halls? Is it going to be partnering with someone else to put housing behind there? Is it going to be to do a community rec center? Is it, you know, these are all ideas. And so I think the purpose of the committee of the whole is to decide what will we present to the public? And then from there, we can have the town halls and the community plans and all that. We don't have to finalize the budget until, I think, April. So, but I agree, we need to make a decision. And as Councillor Mandel alluded to, there are a lot of projects. And maybe there will be ways to save money on this, not only with the facade, but with partnering with an organization to make it a multi-use building where we're not the only funder. So I'll leave it there, but I appreciate the comments. Thank you.
Councillor Jones.
Yes, so that is why I brought up the idea of using the community update, but there's another thing we could do as well, which would be a survey, of a really simple one, and I'm thinking of ways to get feedback from the public before we have the committee of the whole meeting, which I think you suggested the first one, and I don't know if the timing works with the update for that, but a survey would certainly be doable and wouldn't take too much work to figure out exactly what do we want in a survey. I always like looking at things from two different lenses. The first being, well, just what does a person want? They want to see the church there in the future or not see the church there. You know, not talking money right now, just getting a feeling of, you know, how important is it to people in the community to have a building that will be a, not really that old by East Coast standards, but a heritage building for Lantzville. And then the other one being, okay, now if you add the option to, you know, demolish it, it would be X dollars. And if you wanted to do something with it, it could be between, and give a range, you know, one will be a facade with a, maybe a modular behind it to look like the old church, and the other could be a complete redo. So, you know, three different cost options: demolition, the cheap, and the expensive, and see where people start ticking the boxes when they have an idea how much money we're actually talking about. Because how can you really make a decision based on your feelings alone without having an idea how much money there is? So something like that could go in a really just a simple survey to residents. We might get some information that helps us at a committee of the whole quickly get information.
Okay, any further discussion before I call the question? All right, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried unanimously. Okay. All right, so we're still on the capital projects list. Comments? Go ahead, Councillor Jones.
Yeah, I'd say just briefly, my comment was to jump out of my seat or scream or something. We have some work to do here because it isn't just prioritizing. There's also monies here that we haven't even in spirit intended to be going that route. I'm referring to the close to 14 million for new fire hall. What we have approved is an application for a grant that will come through at 6. I don't know if we want to leave 14 in there unless that's the will of council to keep that at 14. So I think that's one discussion that we should have, and there's several more through there along the same vein.
Okay, Councillor Mundell and then myself.
Yeah, actually, just to piggyback on that, I have the same issues when I look at this because there are numerous projects in here that have grants associated with them that basically if the grant doesn't come through, we're likely not doing the project. And if the grant does come through, then the number here isn't right. Like it's not going to be, for example, I believe the tennis court rehabilitation. Where we are in no way, shape, or form did we approve $127,000 for that project. But what it looks like if the public were to look at this, it would be curious and confused that that's the direction we're going. And just as Councillor Jones mentioned, the same thing with the fire hall. If the grant doesn't come through, then we are going to have a discussion about whether we're going to spend $13 million, you're right, $14 million. And I think there was another one in here too, where I was wondering, like, if the grant doesn't come through for these, then they're probably, in my opinion, I wouldn't be supporting them to move ahead. So, lots of stuff on the books here, and yeah, I think we're gonna have to really go through and start paring things down. One of the questions I also had here was for the new fire truck, the 600,000. Does that need to be, I think that's a deposit of some sort. Maybe that can get put off till next year. Maybe that's not something we have to necessarily look at this year. Maybe that can go to 2027. What was another one? Yeah, and some of these studies, master plans and studies, I think we maybe have to take a look and prioritize. And that might be some information that we might need back from staff to be around what of these is a need to have and what is maybe potentially something that can go look at going on the 2027 budget, because as you can see, there's a huge discrepancy between the 2 years, and we can't manage to do it all, in my opinion, in this year. So, yeah, I think there's definitely some consideration and some look that we will need at the capital projects.
So yeah, we got Councillor Jones next, and then after myself. So with respect to where are we at here? I guess it's the line item for Blackjack Drive asphalt replacement. It's just a question. I know it's in 2027, but is the 500,000 just a placeholder, or do we actually have a pretty good high level estimate of what that's actually going to cost?
So in working with the engineers, I've forwarded them this document. That's a placeholder.
Placeholder, like we're looking like it's gonna be 500,000 or plus or minus,
That's
or?
a plus or minus 50%. So
Okay.
I'm thinking because of what I found with the 2025 budget numbers, I'd like a more thorough review but my challenge is, of course, I need the CET position to come online so that I can begin to ask those questions to them. We've got some good numbers now that we've had a couple of tenders come back. Like I'm thinking of Phantom Road specifically. because that's moving from, or that was a project that had been moving from chip seal to full asphalt. But I'd also like it reviewed in the, I'd also like a review done for the road master plan and study. One of the things that I don't have is I don't have a condition rating. So it's difficult to prioritize the road infrastructure. There's a lot to be done, and one of the things that is being highlighted in this document is exactly what you guys have told me. There's a lot of work that needs to get done, particularly in the roads and the water. The trick is what gets done first, and also in that, in a road master plan and study, I'll get not just condition ratings, but I'll also get traffic numbers and where the best place to spend the money is, and we'll get some Class D estimates. Moving into Class B, once we put the tenders out, then it becomes a Class A. But I need a B before council, I'd like to put in a B in my, which is plus or minus 15%. So we get a lot closer in a Class B estimate. I wouldn't say that the Blackjack Road, the 500,000, I'm thinking it's, I need to know what the length of Blackjack Road is, and then I'd like to compare that to Phantom Road now that that's come in. But it's working with the engineers and finding time with the CET/project manager that is currently being hired, and getting these numbers good for council. I'm hoping that by the next iteration of this document, that the CET will be able to come online and I'll be able to get something as close as a Class C, work with the engineers and the CET to get at least to a Class C for next year, and then the year after that, I'll inflate that number. Inflation this year, or inflation for the last 3 years for the island has been around 13.6%. So I should be inflating this number. I should be inflating that number once I get a Class C for 2025. I'd probably be looking at 5%, 5 to 6% inflation over 2025 numbers. So Phantom was 2025 numbers, so I just need to know lengths and the makeup and what's being replaced. Are we moving to a full asphalt replacement, or are we going with chip seal? So I want to get that clarified as well. So there's still a number of questions, and the Public Works Director not being hired, and the engineers, working with the engineers then to get the numbering going, and making sure that council got a document that maintained the list of the projects that they'd previously seen, and introducing additional projects. Looking at the motions that council has put forward through 2025 and amalgamating those into this document was my main focus. And then once the CET gets hired, I'll move into putting a lot of effort into getting a Class C before council in January, hopefully.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, it'd be great to obviously get the numbers a little bit more dialed in, but you know,
Yeah.
I have concerns like, you know, because I look at Alger Road being done in 2026, and that's at a $700,000 estimate. But you know, having been on those roads and so on, and especially Blackjack is a horrible road. Can't imagine it's going to get done for 500,000. I think it's going to be considerably more. And just kind of comparing that against estimates we've had for Dickinson Road, you know, and then I look at what the closing balance for roads is going to be, and it's like 2.8 million at the end of this year. That's what's estimated closing for our essentially for transportation infrastructure. So that's trails, ditches, all of it.
Yeah.
And we have 2.8 million at the close of this year, and we got all these big tickets items. Now we have to be doing Dickinson over potentially 4 years. I want to get back to basics here, and especially with Dickinson, like, you know, we're gonna have to make some hard decisions there, but we just don't have the money, like, especially if we're just gonna continue on as a council doing reserve contributions of it's gonna go up to 190,000. That's the forecasted amount for transportation. It pales in comparison, like even to do Alger and Blackjack, even if we just use the numbers in the budget, that's like 7 years of savings to do that little bit. And we got a lot of roads that need major attention. Forest Turn Way is a horrible road. I think it takes the cake for being the worst road in Lantzville. But if you want to knock your car's alignment out, take it on Forest Turn, and it'll be out of alignment, and you'll be keeping the auto guys in business. So, yeah. Anyways, it's a hot mess in my opinion, in terms of budgeting and so forth. But I'll leave it there. Councillor Jones.
Yes, I have three things that I've accumulated here. The first goes back to the discussion on Dickinson. As you say, Councillor Lerner, we received some plans and we sent them back to get some estimates on them. But it was either that evening or I raised it the following council meeting, I'm not sure, but we have an issue, in my opinion, with those plans in that there is only a half a meter of separation between the road and the semi-rural trail. And what the Parks and Trails Committee has been looking at in part is active transportation guidelines. Dickinson is a route that needs some active transportation. We have consultants that are working on that, so we can look forward to hearing what they have to say. But if we do go with a bike lane, which is just the space to the right of the white line, that has to be 1.5 meters. And if we go with a semi-rural trail, the bylaws that we have passed require 1.5 meters separation between the semi-rural trail and the road. So that design that we received does not comply with our bylaws at present. Obviously, the reason for that we insisted on that 1.5 meters separation is to get people who are walking along these roads that unfortunately people are going a little faster than we would like them to, but we want some separation between the pedestrians and the road. And the 1.5 meters is a distance that fits in very nicely with the use that you can have to the right of the white line for bikes. So just to say to the Public Works and whoever's looking at things going forward, that engineering design that they're doing an estimate on doesn't comply with our bylaws. So we'll need a little something attention to that. The next thing is the projects that we've been talking about. I'll just refer to the two, the fire department and the tennis court, for examples. I'm wondering through to staff if it would be possible to do a breakdown of the cost of the total cost. So that's almost 14 million in the case of the fire hall. And then two numbers to break it down. The first number being the amount of a grant that's been applied for, which obviously we don't know that we have it, but it's nice to know that grant is $6 million grant. It's not 11 million, it's not 3 million, it's 6. And the remainder is on us, the district. So the second number would be the district contribution. And, as a council, we'd need to understand that the grant can fluctuate a bit. You're applying for 6 million, but that can change, and the rest of it can change too as costs go up. And then, so through to staff, would that be possible? I think it'd be useful for council when we have further discussion on these projects, if we had an idea what the grant component was.
Absolutely. I can make that change right away.
Thank you very much. And then
Another, sorry, just one suggestion before we continue. And getting back to something that Councillor Mundell had said, and it seems to be a bit of a hot button here. I can, in the description, put grant dependent for each project that is grant dependent, like the Harwood Reservoir, the fire hall. If you'd like to see that as grant dependent right in the title, so then that'll, I think you guys will be able to see that. Now, did you want the amount that's grant dependent as well in the title, or just grant dependent?
Thank you. Yes, the amount also, because the amount tells us how much the district, having the second number, right? They add up. A plus B equals C. A is the grant amount, B is the district amount, C is the total projected cost. But for some of these items, council hasn't approved the total, the 14 million for the fire hall as an example. That will require further discussion. It may have even, I'm not sure if that was actually all fire hall or, it's for later. There was some other
Yeah,
things in
I-
there, so.
I was just going based on the motion that was passed that supported the grant, so.
Yeah, we were
it's-
supporting the
it's-
application for the
yeah,
grant, not
that's the
the
number.
14.
Yeah.
So that's the reason for them being separated. It's it makes the discussion of how much we are looking at paying ourselves, and makes that number very clear. The second thing is about the master plans. This has been a concern of mine before. If we pay, say, $100,000 on a master plan, the reasoning for that from staff has been twofold. You know, one is so that we have such plans for our community for going forward, but the other is that there's certain grants you can only get with certain master plans. So that would be information that I would actually like in advance, so that I know when if we're being asked to authorize $100,000 for a master plan, I know that there are grants available that cover X percent of that, and I have no idea whether the grants might cover, you know, 25, 50, 75, 100%. But just knowing what's available and what will be applied for is useful information in making a decision. And then obviously going forward is, we know what risk we're taking. If we spend the $100,000 on a grant and we know that we don't even have a chance of getting a grant that's over $25,000, then we know we're looking at $75,000 ask from the district. So that helps me personally with decision-making. So if that can be tied in here, for
Sorry,
example.
Just point of clarification.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I just want to, I just want to be clear for myself. So are you talking about grants available for me to get the plan? Or grants available that may be future grants that come up where there may be a component for, that I need the transportation plan for?
Thank you. That's a really important distinction. I was thinking the latter because I'm assuming that the placeholder here is for the plan itself, so we already have that information. So a stormwater master plan and study would cost $190,000 if I'm following my lines over correctly.
Yeah, so
Right.
like an example of that would probably be like a Water for Life or a Ducks Unlimited grant or something along those lines. That's what you're talking about, like those future grant applications that we might do.
Right. So the
Okay.
plan, to do the plan itself is $190,000. And
Right.
then in addition, that would allow us to apply for certain grants, which may or may not, but cover certain amounts. Nice to know how
Like
much.
stormwater retention ponds and,
Yeah.
or like a piping versus, or percolating through trail systems, hard surfacing versus those
Thank
kinds
you.
of things.
You're kind of reading my mind. That's
that's what you're-
exactly
okay.
where it's going. There's going to be drastically different costs over the short term and the long term for gray infrastructure and gray, green infrastructure and green. I think all three terms are being thrown around now. So I was going to actually ask with the storm master plan and study if the people who do that study also, are they doing just a gray infrastructure study, or are they also really looking at this community and what could be done with the green, for example, the water retention areas and use of our ditches and culverts compared to replacement with pipes in the ground?
Yes, that would be a discussion with the engineer that would be retained. Likely you do an RFP. I'm not sure what the expertise of course is, but I'm sure they could handle it as well.
Thank you. Then those details of the need for green infrastructure and gray green to be included in the plan would draw the person with the expertise. So that answers part of the question. And then the second part was, that was actually the storm master plan and study. And down from that is another item, green infrastructure plan. And I see here, $1 has been put aside for that.
That's my
That did
placeholder.
earn a very unhappy face in my
Sorry.
little notes here.
I
but I'll
haven't
let you
done one of
explain.
those, so I wasn't sure how much those cost. So that was a new one from my perspective.
Thank you. So I think a little more information would be helpful. We just talked about the green infrastructure being within the storm master plan, but obviously there are other types of green infrastructure. So it was certainly the hope of our strategic priorities, because it's got this, green infrastructure and climate action. It's just all over the place in our priorities. And one of the things we talked about was on natural asset management and other ways that we might retain tree canopy in Lantzville, for example, and the retention ponds being another example of that. At the time, we did not, staff said, Director Robinson said that expertise was not currently with him on natural asset management, but that he would be willing to do a course on it. I get up to speed on it. We maybe need to revisit that at some point, staff, to do that, because we still don't have the expertise within our own staff, is my understanding on this, in this particular area. And it may be that there's more than one option of natural asset management as a way going forward to get some of the ideas we have in our strategic priorities fulfilled. So I think we have some work to do on that. So thank you for explaining the $1. You're thinking about other things that may be, and saying the same thing. We need to talk about this and research it out a bit more.
Yes.
Okay, so I think council can talk more about this and debate it, and maybe staff can also do some work to see what's available out there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Mandel?
Just wondering, I know we've had grants in the past that have covered some master plans.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, I'm wondering if that is an option for some of these.
It's definitely something that would be looked at and applied for as they come up.
Okay.
Never miss an opportunity to apply for a grant, right?
No kidding. Yes, perfect. Okay. The tricky thing is, we'll probably, before that happens, we'll have to put it in the budget regardless if we get a grant for it or not. So that's sort of the sort of tricky part.
Yeah, and if a grant isn't, oh, sorry.
Yeah, CO Lasher.
So if I could just give you an example, about a year and a half ago, they were giving everybody active transportation grants. So this municipality might have, I'm thinking, applied for it later than other ones. But in my experience, when we applied in my past and we finished the active transportation plan with the grant, immediately the year after, which was the previous year, the big grants came out to now implement findings of certain projects of that active transportation plan. So in line with what you're saying, sometimes I do find that the money for the plan comes first, and then the actual grant money for the implementation comes out after.
Okay, Councillor Lerner, myself, and then Councillor Jones.
Yeah, I don't have too much more to add on the capital plan. Just one thing I wanted to say was that the grant-dependent items, I agree with having something that indicates it's grant-dependent and how much could be covered from the grant. It's also worth noting that some of these items, even with the grant, there will have to be further discussion. So for example, the tennis court is 127. If the grant covers 125, well, okay. But when you get to something like the fire hall, if we're talking about 14 million and only half is covered, we don't have another half just sitting there. I haven't won the lottery yet, so I think we're gonna have to potentially do a borrowing, which we did discuss previously, and then there's a whole process for that. So none of these things would be set in stone without going through multiple hoops when it comes to the really big items. So just gonna throw that out there. But I think for the purpose of not only the grant applications, but for planning, if we don't put a line item in the budget, then we can't really consider it as something that we're getting even with the grant. So yes, I agree with putting grant dependent on them. That's important. Thank you.
Yeah, and I was just gonna echo the same kind of comment. I think we need to have it in the financial plan and just put a placeholder, but also clearly outline it's grant dependent, so, because it will help in the planning process. Councillor Jones?
Yes, I'll be quite quick here. Just if you could explain the numbers under active transportation plan, please. We know that it was $100,000 grant, well, $100,000, $50,000 was a grant and $50,000 was on us. But those aren't the numbers that I'm seeing here. I'm seeing 80,000 projected for 2026, and could you just please explain the numbers, and if the 50,000 that we kick in, where does it appear if it isn't here?
Absolutely. So it was 100,000. We've spent some of the money in 2025, so I'm bringing the carry forward over. So there was a bit of that. The 50,000 is from the active transportation, and then we matched the 50,000 from the other 50 was from the Community Works Fund.
So if I understand, sorry, because I'm not sure it's
We
what I
were
heard.
stacking
The-
two grants. So we're using Community Works Fund and we're using active transportation together. So we're not using our
understand
own money.
What's
Okay.
going on there, yep, thank you.
Okay, unless there's anything further. Counselor Savage, yeah, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. So just got some comments, food for thought for when we make decisions on these. But with Dickinson Road, we approved that last term. That was over 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. Our last council approved the budget for Dickinson Road. I was hoping this term we'd be doing perhaps a road per year. Sebastian Road was about $950,000, and it included sewers and a lift station. And yet these culverts we keep running into to replace are getting up there to over half that cost. I think it was $575, was it not, for Dickinson? And it would have been nice to have coordinated the culvert on Dickinson while we were replacing the road. I'm sure it would have been done for less. And the other thing is with Village South, they had an amenity for all that Wiles Creek, that the culvert on Dickinson services, a different route for it. It was storm sewered all the way down to Jack's Road. So I'm hoping it was put in the right place. But the reason I bring that up is it's good to plan ahead for these things to see if you can't do a culvert while you're replacing the road. And with the Alger Blackjack Road, hopefully it won't have to be dug up again if water arrives shortly after that. I'm hoping the water pipes are to the side of the road, but again, it's planning ahead. And with the Huddlestone Road lift station, that's only 42,000 thereabouts. I shouldn't say only, but for infrastructure, that's not a big ticket item. And it might be nice to do that in 2026 because it's a big impact for a very low dollar. I've smelt it many times going by there. And for the neighbors, I think it would be nice. So if there is a way to do it for that money, maybe in 2026 would be more appropriate for that. And definitely for Dickinson Road to do it in 2026. I certainly don't want to wait till 2027. Bloods Creek is $350,000 for a new culvert, but our experience with Dickinson Road and Lantzville Road with culverts, my guess is going to be considerably more than that. The tennis court rehabilitation, hopefully we can find out what the funding formula is for that soon. I forget what that was in case we get the grant. And the website upgrade project, that's $125,000 for 2026. I'm wondering if we couldn't postpone that to 2027. That's quite a tax savings, $125,000. That's, about 4% tax increase, maybe a little less. And the storm master plan and study, I would not want that done because the whole thrust of our bylaw 175 amendments and in our priorities is to go with more green infrastructure, not storm sewers everywhere. So I think that's inappropriate to go with that. And the price of 190,000, my goodness. So I'd like to know where that emanated from. At what time period did Public Works suggest that? And the next one is the facility needs study. That's $75,000. I find that's very unnecessary. I think it's obvious what's needed. I don't think you need a consultant to tell us that. The people that use these facilities and council themselves will know where the needs are there. And with the green infrastructure plan, I have a question, please. One of the Ottawa grants was to contribute towards that green infrastructure plan to the tune of, I forget if it was $70,000 or $80,000. So question to staff, was that applied for, that grant? There was two grants. One was for tree planting, the other was for towards the green infrastructure. Does anyone on staff know offhand if that's been applied for?
Yeah, go ahead, Director Spola.
Thank you, Your Worship. No, the Green Infrastructure Plan has not been applied for, to my knowledge. That would be an FCM grant. I know which one that you're speaking of. And that's just a capacity issue. But to get you back to the Bloods Creek replacement, the hydrologist report is just coming back from that. Council should be seeing some good numbers from that pretty quickly here. I know that I've been in contact with Coors on that one, so I'm hoping to get some really good numbers for council. That it may, the sizing may change, and that's what they were trying to determine. This is why it's been taking a bit longer than usual to get the numbers for council. That's been going on for the last 6 weeks. So I did want to highlight that for council. And those are my two answers.
And the other capital project that we had a grant for was the tree planting grant, which had fire protection issues with it. Was that applied for?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, and yet out of the blue, the reservoir grant came before us. Interesting. So my other comment is the well field study. I gave reasons before. I won't be supporting that. I gave reasons for that before. And with the asset management plan updates, we discussed this last summer to make sure. I thought it was very important to get a list of priorities on the roads that need repairing, so residents will know what order they're in for getting replaced, repaired, and so on. Is that part of this asset management plan updates, or what exactly is this?
The asset management plan updates are a continuation from we got a $25,000 grant in 2025, and that we're matching it with $25,000 from a reserve. The asset management plan consisted of getting software and uploading the information that we have and doing several items that did not include a condition rating. The follow-up for that, according to the previous Director of Public Works, was that he was going to do an in-house condition rating, but a transportation or roads master plan and study would also have potentially a condition rating attached to it if that's what council wanted directed. The asset management plan doesn't have a component right now for ongoing maintenance, and so that's what I was going to suggest the asset management plan in 2026 contain. 2025 also included, there's a number of items that don't appear on our map, and George and I went to the RDN, and we discovered through the RDN program that we are already paying for, they're willing to come out and actually GPS all of the missing infrastructure, because it's been determined by Public Works that there are certain things that they want GPSed. So we're going to now swing that information into the map and get some more, get better information for Public Works to start GPSing the brakes and the meter replacement programs and things like that. So it's going to be a lot of moving parts to the asset management plan, with graduating toward a maintenance program for things like valves, valve turning, fire hydrants, all the nodes that you see on a water line, like the pressure relief valves and different things like, or pressure reducing valves, sorry, and things like that. So there's a lot of interesting information that'll come out that'll start to feed into the studies, and will be able to be used by administration to provide better information for council, including exactly what you said. What road needs to be done next? What water line needs to be done next? Condition ratings are incorporated. And then you start to get better costing, because you get better inflation and you start plugging in your real numbers. And then I'm not relying so much on engineers to give me numbers, but I can get Class C estimates from our own information.
Yeah, so just my last comment here is that proper asset management is you take the lifetime of the item you're talking about, divide it by the number of years of its life expectancy, and you divide the replacement cost by the number of years it will be before it needs replacing, and that's proper asset management. One of the problems I have, why I've been reluctant to do this, is because it's the whole package that needs doing. So when council comes up with ideas to create systems that pay for themselves and reduce costs so we can afford proper asset management, like the brush cutting, for example, if that's done in-house, that pays for half the wage of the person we hired. And all the trouble I went to get the grants in Ottawa that weren't acted upon, it just means that it's not a complete financial picture. We're getting all the expenses, but we're not acting upon ways that council come up with to save tax money and to get things like green infrastructure done, which is money saving, as opposed to putting these contaminating, sewer water pipes everywhere with contaminated water. So it's, I think we have a good group moving forward, but my hope is when we do it, we do all of these things in tandem. You have to do this for a complete financial picture. So again, I think we can do this, and hopefully next year, if we're all here at the budget, we can have a more consistent approach so that all these money-saving ways, plus the reasonable expenditures we should be doing on asset management, are all done consistently together, not leaving a lot of the savings behind and just bringing expenses for taxpayers, which is me and the rest of council and the rest of residents, to keep paying for. So that's my view of the capital expenses, and feel free to comment on any of the things I brought up there for food for thought. Thank you.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you. A couple of things, follow up on what Councillor Savage was talking about in a minute. But first, just returning to the Bloods Creek culvert, because I heard a little bit of conversation there, and I'm wondering if I was interpreting it correctly. Comparing that culvert to the design that went in on Dickinson. Dickinson culvert is one that I've never seen in Lantzville before. I am noticing it around in larger communities now that I'm paying a bit more attention, but it's a huge rectangular shaped concrete culvert. It's, I don't know, probably half as wide as this table, and rectangular and a good 3 feet in depth. When I see a culvert of that size, I think dollars, dollars, dollars. Then I went biking around Lantzville to see what was being done up in the foothills for culverts and other places. And I saw that the larger culverts tended to be circular and round. So what I'm wondering is, were you perhaps suggesting that the Bloods Creek culvert replacement actually wouldn't be crazy expensive like Dickinson was? Because it would be design different?
Yeah, go ahead, Director Spola.
So what I heard from Coors when they were doing the design is they were waiting for the hydrologist to make sure that they get an appropriately sized culvert for that creek, because right now it's in failure. They were talking about upsizing based on whatever the hydrologist, so the hydrologist extended his research higher up than what he normally would and lower down than what he normally would. Because the other one is the Bloods Creek crossing at Dickinson as well. So to make sure that that Bloods Creek is draining properly the way that it should be. So we have to wait for the report. I don't know what that's gonna look like at the end of the day.
So I guess I would just infer from that that the engineers determined that the culvert that went in on Dickinson Road, that large rectangular one, was what was necessary in size. Thank you. So the next question is, let's see, what Councillor Savage was talking about with asset management. The only asset management plan I've seen, I think it's the most recent one we have, was the 2018 asset management plan. We looked at that a few years ago now. And one of the things I noticed about it was that it didn't actually have any, not even one natural asset in it, not one mention of any green or gray-green infrastructure, which is interesting because we do actually have some in Lantzville. We have some water retention ponds, we have some rain gardens, but they're not in our asset management plan. They weren't in 2018, and we have several that go back way before then. And this is really in part what I would like to see the shift to be in our asset management planning in Lantzville, is that we first find out what is it that we already have. The district has a water retention pond up by the highway. There's rain gardens that were put in here. And then the next question I want to know about that is, well, of what value are they? And these aren't easy questions. And fortunately, we don't have to invent the wheel on this, because there are people in British Columbia who are considered to be really at the forefront of this in all of Canada. And that work started about 15, almost 20 years ago now, over on the Sunshine Coast. So it was in its infancy then, but now asset management, natural asset management has grown and been detailed out, and so that you can actually put a value onto tree canopy, onto the square area that you have and the type of coverage, so that you can put a value on your creeks like Bloods Creek. And that value is assessed, per meter of creek, including a riparian area. And this is helpful going forward for us, I feel, in many ways, because it will financially justify a commitment to a direction which is a little bit more in line with green infrastructure, climate action, and some of the things that we might want to do as a community and going forward in the future. So again, over to tie it into what Councillor Savage was saying. We have directed this through our strategic priorities. We are aware that the expertise is not here within our staff. I would hope that we can do something about that, or if all the work is going to be done through consultants, that we know we have consultants who are, strong in this area and understand the will of council and community in these things. It takes time. The natural asset management program that is being used by number of communities in British Columbia is a 6-step process. The 6th step is incorporating into the financial planning, into the kind of software that our director uses. And generally, it's 3 years before that step is reached. And the first step is just answering the question that I posed earlier. What are the natural assets that we have right now in Lantzville? Thank you.
Okay, so recognizing, yes, this is a special meeting, there is no time limit. I wasn't planning on being here too late this evening. I don't know if other counselors, what their intent is, how late we're staying to, but I don't know what's left for counselors, if they, what they need to get out of this session. Are we done with 7C? Yeah, so. All right, so moving on, there'll be plenty of time to, I guess, really get into debate and so forth. But we're on to 7D, which is the utility rate increase. So Director Spola, you have some information for us, and then there is a motion in their agenda package.
Thank you, Your Worship. This comes with a recommendation tonight that we increase the water user rate fees by 5%, sewer rates by 5%, and curbside pickup rates by 5%. In the budget that was adopted by council last year, it showed a 3% increase. I'm asking for an additional 2 to maintain the reserve for water. I'm also asking for the sewer rates to go up by 5%. And that's mainly to do with funding the sewer projects that are upcoming, namely Phase 4 sewer expansion, Phase 5, 6, those kinds of things, moving those sewer projects along and getting and fulfilling that vision of council to extend sewer out to the different areas. The reason for the 5% increase in the curbside pickup rates, as mentioned earlier tonight, was we did receive notification from Nanaimo that they gave us, which is attached to here, their bylaw and their email showing that their intent is to go up by 5% in the collection rates. RDN, sorry, yeah.
Okay. Councillor Lerner and then Councillor Jones.
Thank you. I had a couple questions. So if I understand, just want to understand if I understand correctly, the 5% for solid curbside pickup rates, that's basically the RDN is going to be charging us 5% more, so we need to update our bylaw to match it, or else we are subsidizing the cost. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then the water rate of 5% is essentially just to offset the water rates. There's no buffer built into that. It's basically money in, money out. Is that correct?
The water rates support the cost of maintaining the distribution system.
Right.
The wells, so our production system and our storage systems.
Okay.
So the user rates for the 5% are indicative of the additional positions.
Right.
Because we're adding costs there, and also inflationary costs. And we're seeing that as we go through the operating budget, we'll be looking at the cost impact that has occurred from additional, like you'll see we've had more breaks than usual this year. So that's difficult to predict how many breaks you get. AC pipe does get old and it gets punky, and we have to replace it with PVC from time to time, and that would be part of our infrastructure renewal program, which is in the capital. But we also have to maintain a budget to on the old lines to make sure that we have enough money to do the repair work. And we also have meters that need replacing and things like that.
Thank you. So I guess the question for me is, I understand the RDN part of it. Mm-hmm. My concern with the water and sewer that I'm just trying to understand is, if we do not approve the new water tech position, then the rates don't need to go up by this much. but if we do approve it, then they do. So I just wanted to make sure we're not putting the cart before the horse, so to speak, because we haven't approved that position yet. And the second thing was with the sewer, I wanted to understand what you mentioned by, staff mentioned by increasing to, for sewer expansion, because my understanding was that there would be a parcel tax that people would vote on, just like the previous sewer expansion. So whenever phase 2 was done, for example, people voted for a petition against parcel tax that covered the entire cost. So I don't understand why existing users would be paying for expansion to areas that don't have it yet. I'm not sure if you could comment. I don't fully understand.
I will research that.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Just through to council, then my recommendation tonight might be to just entertain the RDN portion and leave the sewer and water until we get further details on those and make decisions. Thank you.
Councillor Jones?
Yes, I like that recommendation, Councillor Lerner. And with respect to the water, two questions I have. Just want to make sure to hear from staff that the increase in water rates does not apply to people who are on, residents who are on well water, correct?
If you're not using water, you're not billed for water.
Good. Oh, people always like to hear that. And then the other thing is, if you could give an approximate dollar figure in tax increase that this 5%, or well, all these increases come to per household.
I will bring that to a future council meeting. You want to see everything compiled into one? The 5% for water, 5% for
Yeah,
sewer,
yeah, just so
5%.
basically you're saying if all of this is
the-
approved as you're asking, it will be about $20 increase in taxes per household
Per month
in
kind of
the
thing,
next
per month.
year or whatever
Yeah, 'cause
that number
it's-
is.
The 6.5 was $107 on average home. So that's what the 6.5 was, and then I'll figure out the water and sewer and garbage as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Mandel.
And I'm just wondering if we do need a recalculation of, because I'm thinking the same lines as Councillor Lerner, that if we're not using current user fees to pay for future sewer and water connections to,
So by user fees going through to the reserve, and then the reserve being used to pay for any future infrastructure or the maintenance of current infrastructure, that's all where the user fees come from. So as you maintain those reserves, I use them for whatever council deems necessary. And you can use reserves, you can use, there's DCCs that are involved in this, there's a lot of moving parts to future infrastructure. So I just want to make sure that our reserves, that we maintain our reserves as best we can. And when you add positions and inflation comes, and when you have all these future projections, you're just trying to keep up with that amount, right? To make sure that your reserve, like when you look at the reserve balances that I produced for council, the large sheet that I just handed out, it would be this one here. So that would have been, for Councillor Savage, the small version would have been on page 19 of the agenda. You'll see the reserve attachment. You can see that at the very right-hand side, the sewer capital has a nice healthy balance of 2.7 million, but we're projecting the water to have a deficit of 674,000 based on the capital project list. So, you know, those are things that that's why I'm like, the amount that we have going to the water reserve, as the mayor pointed out, isn't enough for all the projects that we have to get done, like the Millard-Lynn line and every other water line that we have coming up. You know, I mean, that's why the 5% was just maintaining that reserve transfer balance. You see that it reduces every year because of inflation that we're projecting. And that doesn't include the surprise expenses that we get from time to time, like we get more water breaks than what we budget for. Those aren't controllable things that we can foresee. You know, we budget for X number of breaks, but it takes more money to fix the break now than it did 2 years ago, et cetera. You know, the same old thing, right? It's inflation that we're always struggling against.
Yeah, no, I definitely understand that piece, and I just think that the public would be on board probably with the maintenance side, but to know that their rates are increasing 5% for future projects, which in many cases, we have like local area service plans where people, as Councillor Lerner, vote on, and then they pay for it. So
Yeah.
part of it, or at least if we don't get a grant or anything like that, they're kind of on the hook for that part, which kind of makes sense because it's going to be their service versus the current ratepayers paying, you know, an increase in their rates to pay for a water service that they're never going to use.
Absolutely, I understand that for sure. There's also a portion that the municipality may be required to pay. So that's where you look to the grant funding and potentially your reserves to help that along, because you need to upgrade things like potentially a lift station, or like to keep the pipe, to keep the effluent moving down the line, you know, and those kinds of things. So there's a lot in there that the municipality would be responsible for, and calculating that into the parcel tax, like you guys are saying, for sure.
Thank you.
Any further comments? Go ahead, Councillor Savage.
Yeah, thank you. So, yes, I concur with those comments about Phase 4, that traditionally it's been anyone that wants to expand sewer can go through a petition for service. And we can also keep our eyes out for grants. Generally speaking, sewer is so expensive that it's related to a grant. Phase 3 certainly was, and it was a real success, Phase 3, with the grant. So I have never seen this before, where we're getting current sewer users to pay for the expansion to other areas. And I know that this was very sensitive. So back when we got Nanaimo Water, that was quite an issue, where current water users that had paid into the system, some of that money was used towards expanding, getting Nanaimo Water for future areas and so on. It's just something to think carefully about, and I would not want to increase fees for that reason. Second is with the water parcel tax, it's been around $3.55 for a long time. And it's just generally speaking, but generally speaking for many years, it's been the water user fees are for operating costs, and generally the parcel taxes are for capital costs, capital improvements. And as part of capital, water costs, like replacing these old asbestos pipes, that I really think that I really want to help residents with their costs, but the water parcel tax is long overdue for an increase, so we can start using some of these funds to replace these asbestos pipes that are there. And I was hoping we would be replacing them in a faster pace. We are now. I see that one of the capital costs is replacing the Millard area, some of the water pipes there, and that's a good thing. So when we get to debating this, perhaps we can look into increasing the parcel tax for capital costs. And also, council made a motion some time ago, a year and a half ago, whatever, to find out what we can do with our connection fees what the limits are and what the extent of how we can use them. And there's another source of funding to help with the capital costs for our water infrastructure, because I would really like to see these asbestos pipes replaced on a more aggressive timetable. So those are my comments on the fees. So basically, my viewpoint would be if the operating costs justify an increase in fees for current water and sewer users, then that's fine to reflect that. And for both sewer and water users, I'd like to see more input on the capital side of things for future replacement of these pipes and current replacement of the water pipes. So the sewer pipes are all fairly, they're not that old, but with water, holy cow. So that would be my recommendation, to see what we could do for increasing I think it's still 355 to start upping that rate, so it's more realistic to start replacing these pipes. Thank you.
For myself, just through the staff, maybe some clarification just around, the phase 4 expansion. It's my understanding that the, current sewer users, so it'd be phase 1, 2, and 3, will not be contributing towards the expansion of phase 4. And just like we went through in phase 3 expansion, that cost is solely borne by the folks in that local area service. So I just want to make sure council's aware of that. I know that it's going to be some time and energy from the district to, do the initial legwork, just as we did the initial legwork with phase 3, so we can get it to a place where residents can start to vote. So maybe
That's correct.
is that correct? So I
Yeah,
just want to make sure
that's
when we're
correct.
talking about these sewer
Yeah,
fees.
it's, I was thinking more about lift stations that would be required and things along that nature.
Yeah. And it's always been that my understanding with the sewer system, it's, we're only using a small portion of it right now, but it's intended for growth. It's not intended to stop at phase 3. If people are interested in moving to phase 4 and bearing, or, those are taking on those costs, then so be it. It's up to them to decide. But it's us as a council to allow the service to move forward, and it's up to the residents at that time down the road to determine if they want to accept that service. But I think we've heard loud and clear from that area that they're interested in getting this started. No different than phase 3 and phase 2 and yesteryears kind of thing. But anyways, I'll leave it there. So in terms of, there's a motion, my advice to council is just to leave it. We don't have to provide the RDN with an answer. My understanding, do we have to provide them with an answer right away, or can we hold off until the next budget meeting?
Well, what'll happen is the RDN will pass that, and then they'll increase our fees. If we don't increase at the same time, we'll be behind. But council can defer that. It'll just cut into that 10% administration fee discount.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, so we probably do need to move the motion there, so, yeah, go ahead, Councilor Lerner.
You okay if I move a motion then?
Well, I was just gonna
Oh,
move
you were gonna
So,
move it. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, the council directs staff to increase the solid waste curbside pickup rate fees by 5% and amend the miscellaneous fees and rates bylaw accordingly. Second by Councilor Lerner. Any discussion on that through the council? Okay, hearing nothing, I'll move to call in the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. All right, anything further with respect to utility rate increase? Okay, at this point, is there any new business? Late items? Notices of motion? Public clarification, so persons recognized by the chair to speak must first state their name and address for the record and the agenda item for which they are seeking clarification, and may speak for up to 2 minutes to ask for clarification questions. For example, how did the vote go, any technicalities, requests, or interpretation, or abbreviations, or jargon, etc. So name and address, please, and clarification question.
Dave Scott, 6898 Harwood Drive. What I'm curious about is Community Building B, the church. And it ties in also with Community Building A, Costin Hall, they're in the same property. And in the past, council has had as a strategic direction to have public consultation on both buildings. So what I'm asking is there any consideration of looking at both buildings if we're going through a public process, rather than just looking at the church?
Okay, so we've received the question, but I don't think we really have an answer as a body for that. But thank you for posing that.
Just something to think about.
Sure, thank you. All right, any additional clarification questions? Okay, hearing nothing, we'll move on. So got the additional item added, which is a motion to close the meeting to the public pursuant to sections 91 subsection C, 91, or 90 subsection 1 subsection E, the community charter. Is there a seconder? Second by Councillor Lerner. I will call the question. All those in favor, opposed, it's carried unanimously. And what have we got here?